So I saw Ghostbusters Frozen Empire in theaters a couple days ago, and I came to a realization about the franchise that I'd like to share in the following review. So why don't you be the gatekeeper to my keymaster, and let's go on a lengthy discussion of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is new in theaters from Sony Pictures. It's directed by Gil Kenan and written by Jason Reitman, Gil Kenan, from characters created by Ivan Reitman, Harold Ramis, and Dan Aykroyd. The family of the late Egon Spengler adapt to their new home in the Ghostbusters HQ, formerly a New York firehouse involved in the investigation of an incident involving a secret society of millionaires who all froze to death in New York in July after tampering with an ancient artifact. When a man named Nadim, played by Kumail Nanjiani, finds the artifact and attempts to sell it for profit to a cult arts dealer and retired Ghostbuster Ray Stantz, played by Dan Aykroyd, it unleashes an ancient evil bent on freezing the world. For some reason. Now Ghostbusters, old and new, must once again suit up and take on a supernatural menace to save New York City and the rest of the world from paranormal monsters. Now, I'm not going to shit all over this movie. The Ghostbuster franchise has been through the ringer, and simply surviving the 2016 fiasco is proof enough that it's a strong franchise able to stand the test of time. The thing is, I was never into Ghostbusters, so seeing it in its various incarnations never really bothered me that much. I understand, though, seeing the way many franchises have seemingly shunned their past incarnations in favor of modern takes is a frustrating thing. I liked the first movie, tolerated the second, and watched the cartoon when I happened to be home with the TV on at the time, back in the 80s. Or was that the 90s? While I feel the 2016 Ghostbusters was a shameful and mean-spirited snipe at previous fans, I felt the main reason the film didn't work was that it wasn't funny. It relied way too little on story and way too much on the cast ad-libbing. It had a director who was too busy sniffing his own farts, as well as his actresses, so much that he felt everything they did was golden pudding and or was too intimidated by them to edit or, direct them. If you look at the last 3 Ghostbuster movies, you can basically see that it very closely charts the loopity-loop course of most Hollywood franchises have taken in the last 10 years. Only Ghostbusters seems to have the privilege of doing it first. Ghostbusters 2016 decided to toss out the lore and force an all-new, all-different set of ghost hunters on us. It was a clear message that this was a Ghostbusters that had, in the eyes of Hollywood, evolved with a modern cast made of women. Box office results and audience reaction pretty much let Hollywood know that that was not the Ghostbusters they wanted to see, and the film bombed. Support the message the movie was relaying all you want, but the result was box office poison. So as a reaction to the 2016 failure, Ghostbusters 2021, aka Afterlife, seemed to be a drastic turnaround, as everything from its trailer to the movie itself oozed with thick, gooey nostalgia, not only for the Ghostbusters' first 2 films, but that saccharine-laced 80s-era latchkey kids on bikes Amblin-esque nostalgia. Hell, it even had one of the Stranger Things kids in it to push the point home, and the son of the original's director at the helm. The result felt like a small-stakes refocus for the series that didn't blow my socks off, but it did embrace the Ghostbusters was a franchise that existed before the turn of the century. Not in need of a complete makeover, but one in need of a few modern nips and tucks. The result was a modest hit with a smattering of appreciation from critics and fans alike. Overall, Afterlife is a film you just can't hate, and while hard retro nostalgia seems to be where Hollywood is now with films like Roadhouse and Top Gun coming back, it still seems more like a step backwards to something easy and comfortable than an evolution in movie making. For what it's worth, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire seems to be what's next in that ongoing evolution. It's laced with the same kind of nostalgic vibes. The original cast, who are living, sans Rick Moranis, unfortunately, are back in more of an advisory cameo role, but the focus is mostly on the new generation, moving the Spengler family together as a tighter unit. So basically, there's a strong conventional family theme to Ghostbusters that was kind of introduced in Ghostbusters 2.
I don't have friends. I got family.
Yeah, that's right, Vin. Family. And while it is overly hokey at times, there's a genuine attempt to seriously support family as one of the film's main conflicts. This does steep the film in melodramatic scenes where Paul Rudd's Gary Gooberman clumsily attempts to be a parent to his stepchildren, learning when to be stern and when to be the cool friend. This at least gives a star like Rudd something to work with, otherwise he wouldn't be part of the story at all. Still, this is a sitcom conflict seen in everything from The Brady Bunch to My Two Dads. It's interesting that these issues of fatherhood don't really have anything to do with Finn Wolfhard's Trevor, and mainly focuses on the conflict between Rudd's Gary and Phoebe, played by McKenna Grace. Wolfhard's character is busy attempting to track and capture Slimer, who seems to be hiding out in the Ghostbusters attic for some reason. But a strong father Rudd really is not, as in the end, Gary even calls the family the Spengler family, embracing the surname of his wife's dead husband. Not a very masculine look, Paul. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire tries to have it both ways and peppers in some modern issues that seem to take precedence over the family stuff, as the main subplot is a budding romance between McKenna Grace's Phoebe and a ghost named Melanie, played by Emily Allen Lind. Phoebe even misses the conversation Gary thinks he's having with her outside of her door, as Phoebe is instead attempting to become a ghost herself in order to further her relationship with Melody. So while it's never named as to whether these two girls are friends or budding lesbians, the undertones are still there if that's the way you want to see them. And I feel that is the compromise both those on the far right and left of the spectrum are going to have to make. Sure, you get your family values and old-timers spouting old-school humor, but then you're going to get your LGBTQ themes under the surface as well. That doesn't mean there shouldn't be movies where these themes can't be more prevalent, but in a mainstream film that is trying to attract audiences of all kinds, the way Ghostbusters Frozen Empire brushes up against these more divisive themes might be the best way to go. I feel that for these multi-million-dollar franchises to be successful, they should boil the films down to basics and ask themselves why audiences go to them in the first place. For Ghostbusters, it's seeing the everyman take on the supernatural. There are blue-collar, off-the-cuff jokes, and there are fun ghosts with cool effects. And all of the films in the franchise have done at least this to varying levels of competency. It's the undertones and subplots that make each installment individual. Some were risky, and they paid off. Others were Ghostbusters 2016. All of that aside, I think I've finally come to the realization that Ghostbusters is a franchise that is just not for me anymore. I didn't hate Frozen Empire. The effects were fun. Some of them, like the callback to the ghostly, shushing librarian, were done really well. Others, like a simple red dot poltergeist leaping from one object to another, leading to an obnoxious Glad trash bag product placement, were uninspired as hell. But aside from a few likable lines from Paul Rudd, I didn't really laugh at this one. The movie delivers on dazzling effects and familiar faces galore, but after we saw all of these folks just 3 years ago in Afterlife, it really doesn't seem like there's anything left for these older actors to do. And unfortunately, this new generation of Ghostbusters aren't interesting enough for me to really follow. At the same time, there were a few families in the theater I saw Ghostbusters Frozen Empire in, and they seemed to be laughing out loud and having a great old time. So I guess this is a movie for them. And I'm cool with that. I'm sure there will be some franchise that gets modernized that will get me all gassed up soon, but for me, this evolution we've witnessed with Ghostbusters over the last decade doesn't really bother me. Is Ghostbusters Frozen Empire a good movie? For me, not really. The cast is way too big, and the script gives very few of them things to do. This leaves the bulk of them standing around with their hands in their pockets for large periods of time, only flashing to each character for a snarky line or two. I mean, Bill Murray just shows up and tosses out a snide comment and then fades into the background again. His interaction with Peck, another returning character played again by William Atherton, should have been epic, but turns out to be pitiful and feels like bad ad-libbing. Carrie Coon is wasted as the mother of the Spengler family. By the way they are ignoring her, I thought they might kill her off in order to push Rudd's character into the forefront, but nothing that heavy is dealt with in this family-friendly film. Logan Kim's podcast was annoying in Afterlife, but he's hardly a factor in this one, and his crush on Phoebe is barely addressed, as her character is much more interested in some ghost love than anything else. Celeste O'Connor is back as Lucky, but after everyone hugs her when she reappears, she disappears again and barely gets anything to do. Her budding romance with Trevor is barely addressed, as Trevor is more interested in catching Slimer than this gal he pined over in the last movie. There's simply too many characters here, and with the bulk focusing on
family.
There isn't room to give all of them something to do. I've never found Kumail Nanjiani very funny, and he continues that streak here, delivering his droll humor and watching the jokes plop out of his mouth like turds. And there's no real reason why Patton Oswalt is here. He basically takes away from Ray's role as a historian and dilutes the characters even more with lame filler humor. Half of this cast has nothing to do and could have been shaved away in order to tell a tighter, more cohesive story. On top of that, I challenge anyone to tell me what the motivation of the main monster was. Freeze the world, maybe? But what happens after that? It just doesn't feel like the bad guy was thought about after the cool design was made up. I'd be much more interested in the hinted at monsters who have been trapped for years in the ghost compactor and might want revenge after all this time. This was hinted at, but nothing really comes of it once things start freezing. My advice, no one asked for it, but I'm going to give it. Shelve Ghostbusters for a bit. Let the cast grow older and maybe develop some personality outside of this franchise to make their stars bigger. That way, if they return, you want to see them return to this role. Maybe Finn Wolfhard can do that Tiny Tim biopic he's destined to play. McKenna Grace is good. She's probably the best part of the movie, as she seems to be the only one with a likable arc and rebellious personality that stays in tune with the original Ghostbusters attitude. Maybe if her star grows, her presence will elevate a future film. Also, if you're not going to do anything with Carrie Coon, kill the character. It'll make for some good drama among the surviving Spenglers and maybe pull them all together, elevating Rudd's role as the leader. Aykroyd and Hudson seem to still have a function in the story, with Ray being the historian and Winston being the money behind the organization. But as much as I love Bill Murray, unless you can find a use for him, don't waste his or our time with a cameo. Shrink the cast, focus on a single menace, and give it a personality. When the kids are grown, do some of that double entendre humor that it would be inappropriate to do now, as it will be much less cringe bantered about among the adults. I think if all of that is addressed, the Ghostbusters franchise might have some life in it yet. As I walked away from Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, not really hating it, but feeling more apathetic than anything else, I realized it's a franchise I can live without. It's sad that I came to that conclusion, but I think it would have been even more sad for me getting pissed about a franchise I never really thought about in the first place. I think I've gone on long enough. Hopefully in here there's a review. Did you guys see Ghostbusters Frozen Empire? Are you gonna? If not, why? Let me know down in the comments. Please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be. Stuck inside your reality. You're doomed. Oh, you're doomed. You're doomed. God live the life that you are meant to be. Live inside